How are you reading into the Treasurer claiming that we are in recession?
No, that's a fact. And I think we've actually been hearing that from the Prime Minister himself, basically, since an interview was done, I think, with you guys, actually, back in around about sort of February, March, when this whole started. He basically said the word he used, it's academic now, and that's pretty much the case. It'll be very interesting also to sort of see, as you just alluded to, what goes on with regards to those announcements around the building size. Yesterday, we actually got building approvals that were significantly better. Although they did contract in April, they were significantly better than expected. So they were a contraction of around about 2.5%. Expectation had been for about 10 to even as much as 15% contraction in building approvals, according to some economists, those that are out there quite bearish. I think also what you're starting to see is that today we get retail sales and the trade balance. And why that's so important is that they will be for April to the peak of the lockdown and the peak of the understanding about how much of an impact it had. Again, getting back to your question about what the Treasurer talked about, he did say that we are going to see an incredibly sharp decline in the second quarter. And the expectation, particularly for retail sales, will be a record decline. So the consensus is a 17.9% contraction in April. And that would therefore get back to what he reiterated yesterday, is that, yep, we're in recession. And the second quarter is really going to be quite stark and explain exactly how bad it is.
Evan, I had an interview with the Treasurer a short time ago, actually, and I asked him a few times if a recession could lead to a depression, and he didn't answer either time. Maybe he's been spooked by his predictions of the past and doesn't want to make any kind of predictions, but do you see us going there?
So it depends on how you define a depression. So the depression was basically, the Great Depression now is how, like in economics, we talk about a depression. So depression is 3 years of negative growth.
Right.
And that, therefore, is very unlikely. And the way I say that and answer that is, again, what's going over my shoulder here and how green this all is. US markets are on a tear, so we are here. The expectation from the markets is that we will get a V-shaped recovery. If you look at what's going on and likely to happen through July, September, we will get growth. So in answer to that question about a depression, no. The question probably is, are we going to get a repeated couple of recessions where we get a quarter of growth and then 2 quarters of negative growth? So could Q4 and Q1 next year be negative and be recession? That may happen. That's the question. Depression, no, but sustained, unfortunate, regularly recessions could be a question. Doesn't look likely, but again, it's certainly a valid question and one that will be asked several times over as we get through this whole crisis.
Evan, what about the markets at the moment? They're basically flipping the bird to all this economic news at the moment, aren't they? They keep moving forward.
They do. And look, the question becomes, and I was asked yesterday, the dislocation between what the economics is showing and what markets are doing. Markets, under theory, always price 12 months ahead, and they are pricing in exactly that question you asked me before about whether or not we are going to have not a depression, but a consistent recession. And they suggest not. The data is also backing that call, which is interesting. The US data is getting better. You're starting to show the May and end of April data in the US, and there is those signs that those reopening of the states is coming through. You've seen better than expected ADP employment numbers. It's not declining at the rapid rates that we saw at the end of March and April. You're starting to see building numbers. Mortgages also in the US were better than expected last night with the data, which brings us to where we're going. If you have a look at the moment, tech, healthcare and discretionary over in the US is only 1% away from their highs in February, which was a record all-time high. So
amazing.
That is on that idea. So it is an amazing thing, and don't worry, it's certainly making a lot of people, including myself, scratch my head. But the market is certainly doing what it does, and that is that, unfortunately, it does look through all of the events that we've just been discussing.
Okay.
And that's the way it goes.